Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Wacko Prophet podcast. My name is Imran. This podcast is something done entirely by me, created for the purpose of discussing and geeking out about movies, TV series, books, and games. All things fiction. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, hello there. I'm currently in the process of discussing and reviewing Season 1 of the YouTube Red and Netflix series Cobra Kai, and today I will be giving my very amateur but very over-analytical impression or review on Season 1 Episode 7, named All Valley. I know I'm repeating myself because I say this in pretty much every podcast episode, but I'll do the same now for the benefit of any potential new listeners. I will not be going into things beat by beat, but I will talk about some of the good and bad things I noticed throughout the episode. Naturally, this means that there will be spoilers, so please make sure you've watched at least up to episode 7 before you proceed. I also understand that Cobra Kai is a series made to be binged, but I am taking it one episode and 1 week at a time, just to ensure that what I say here will not be influenced inadvertently by my knowledge of future events. I'm also avoiding trailers entirely. Although I have unwittingly seen things, which I have spoken about earlier, I try to avoid future spoilers, both intentional and unintentional, as much as possible. So, TLDR, short version of what I'm saying here, watch the episode first. It's alright. I can wait. Okay, now that you're back, a little reminder on what preceded the events of this episode. As of the end of episode 6, Johnny Lawrence is now getting used to being a full-time sensei with a crowded dojo. Miguel, who is Johnny's protege, is hitting it off quite well with Samantha, who is Daniel LaRusso's daughter, and is as of now a bit of an outcast because of the events of Cobra Kai up to episode 6. Shout out to Douche Kyler. Robbie, who is Johnny's son, has joined LaRusso Auto Group and has become close to Daniel, who has agreed to teach him his version of karate, Miyagi version of karate, so to speak. Daniel's resentment towards Johnny and Cobra Kai in general is still very much alive. And now we have All Valley, which is a pretty great episode. That's what I like about Season 1 so far. All the episodes are pretty fun to watch, and most importantly, they're very short. I've always had an issue with TV series that feel the need to get all their episodes up to the 1 hour mark just because that's a standard set by other more successful TV shows. And they don't always have enough substance to support that kind of time. I'll talk a bit more about that once I get into this particular episode. So because I'd like to start off focusing on Cobra Kai. Alright then. The good. Number 1. Robbie's training regimen. I've maintained that Cobra Kai has had some amazingly fun opening sequences in almost all of its episodes in Season 1 so far. I loved number 2 and number 6 in particular, and All Valley is fun in its own right as well, and is a sweet throwback to the original Karate Kid movie. It has to do with Robbie immediately getting put to work training by Daniel. Now, I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier, because I just thought that when he became Daniel's student, when Daniel agreed to be his sensei, he'd just come to Daniel's dojo and do the normal karate stuff that I assume people do when they start training. But Daniel has other ideas. He goes the Mr. Miyagi way. It's fun to watch, and it does double duty of training Robbie in a roundabout way, and also establishing that Daniel enjoys karate and misses it, and feels very much in his element when he's getting into it. We see the classics of wax on, wax off, the classics of using the window cleaner in a very specific way, but then we also see some new additions, I'm assuming, thought up by Daniel, which also implies that he has been practicing karate for a long time since we last saw him in Karate Kid 3. Now that I think about it, I wonder if Mr. Miyagi had anything to do with Daniel getting into the automobile business also. Because if I remember correctly, Mr. Miyagi had a collection of old cars in the first movie, which he made Daniel clean. The whole wax on, wax off thing. Is the implication here that influenced and possibly helped Daniel grow his own business as well? I'm not sure, but I like the fact that they're not detailing everything out to us and leaving some room for our imagination in quite a good way. So that's good. I'm also going to guess that the actor that is playing Robbie is adept at karate to begin with, because the scene where all his unconventional training comes together just after Daniel's "I love this part" dialogue was something special. I don't want to bother Googling it to see if I'm right, because I tend to be overly paranoid about spoilers and such. But that little scene in Daniel's dojo where they do some light sparring and Robbie gets to show off all the moves that he learned is very good payoff and is done very well. It doesn't feel as earned as Miguel's did, because this particular scene happened quite fast in the beginning of the very next episode after Daniel agreed to teach Robbie. But I'll give it a pass because I understand that they need to move things along. Daniel also helps Robbie in his spiritual journey, so to speak, with that scene with little bonsai trees that he keeps in his work premises. The whole talk about how the tree is Robbie, or Robbie is a tree, I suppose, and it's his own job to visualize what he wants to be and then make the necessary arrangements. It is on the nose, but also on point in a good way as well. This scene is amazing when put in comparison to another scene that takes place late in the episode, especially when you compare the two scenes' payoffs, which I'll talk about when we get to it. Anyway, that is the first good thing that I noticed and that I appreciated. Second, Miguel's date, or should I say not date, with Samantha. I think I've mentioned this before. I can watch anything in fiction. I can watch violence, torture, horror, drama, feel-good stuff, romance, anything as long as it's done well. As I also mentioned previously, the only thing that I have difficulty watching is personal family drama, which is why I've had trouble watching Johnny's issues with his estranged family. Having said that, I'm not that much into romance. And that's not because, I'm a man and men don't do romance or whatever. I just feel like most modern romance just don't do a good job with how they put out the story and how they act it out. They just overdo it, which I find a little unnecessary. But I also understand that I'm not necessarily the demographic that they're going for. I'm a 30-year-old dude who is way too into movies and TV series and books and games. So it's pretty much not for me, and I get that. Anyway, I'm rambling. My point is, they do the relationship building between Miguel and Samantha very well. And given that they had such a short time to dedicate to it, I feel fully invested in Miguel and Samantha really coming into their own and getting together. So they aced it, really, in the best way, in the most 80s cheesy way. I was admittedly dreading some parts of their scenes because there seemed to be some setup for Miguel to make a wrong move. Let me tell you what I mean. Miguel goes to Johnny for advice on how to approach Samantha about a date. Johnny gives some pretty good advice, again just skirting the line on being an asshole, which is very characteristic of him. I'm talking specifically about the exchange between them where Johnny says that as a Cobra Kai, you don't accept defeat. Miguel being Miguel, he retorts saying that no means no. But Johnny clarifies that when you're getting physical, no obviously means no. But when you're trying to ask her out on a date, don't accept defeat. I love that whole exchange. It immediately reaffirms Johnny as a bit of a jerk who certainly is not a creep, like Kyla was. And it also shows how mature Miguel is because he interprets that advice in his own way, which is also very characteristic of him. What had me a little worried is Johnny's advice to go for the kiss on the first date, which I thought was going to lead to Miguel trying it out despite Sam's refusal, or it leading to a rift between them because she's hesitant to proceed. The reason I'm saying this is because Sam is even reluctant to actually start dating or not dating because she has had admittedly bad experience with Kyla. If that had played out, if the attempted kiss had played out, I would have categorized that as unnecessary manufactured drama, unnecessary conflict, basically, the thing I've been preaching against for most of the episodes in this podcast. And I was absolutely positive that it would happen. And I'm glad to be proven wrong. They do have a cute moment, but it's initiated almost entirely by Sam, which is awesome. This just puts more good points to her character in my book, and now more than ever, I'm really looking forward to having a really good karate scene akin to what Miguel had in the cafeteria, but with Sam being the protagonist. Sam also inadvertently follows Johnny's advice. She initiates the moment, and she's the one who goes in for the kiss. Are the writers telling us that she's a Cobra Kai? Am I reading too much into this? Possibly, maybe. Moving on. The good number 3. Johnny's confrontation with the tournament committee meeting. One of the story threads that pop up in this episode is the All Valley Karate Tournament, which Johnny finds out Cobra Kai has a permanent ban in because of the events that took place, I believe, in Karate Kid 3. Listening to some pretty good advice from Miguel, Johnny goes to the committee meeting hoping to appeal and revoke this ban. And who should he find there as part of the committee? Except for Daniel LaRusso. Without getting too much into it, Johnny behaves like a proper, well-adjusted adult, makes a reasonable case, and manages to win back the possibility to compete and unban themselves. Now, some of you may watch Cobra Kai just for the fights, and I'm completely cool with that, but I'm such a goddamn nerd that I enjoy really well done, tense dialogue sequences in my fiction, and this was right up there. Cheesy as hell for sure, but very much on brand to what the show has been until now. It shows a lot of growth from Johnny's side because he knows by now that Miguel gives good advice. He listens to him and follows through. It also shows that Daniel, while still being a pretty good, decent guy, harbors a grudge towards Johnny and Cobra Kai in general, so much so that he is willing to go to unreasonable lengths and is visibly frustrated when even considering allowing Cobra Kai to come back. I'd even wager that he had a hand in initiating the ban, or at the very least in ensuring that the ban is maintained throughout all these years, because the other members in the committee clearly has no clue what's going on. Because Daniel does have the power and the influence within the community, as we have seen in the previous episodes, to actually be able to do that. It's great. See, this is, I believe, how you do pretty good world building. If you remember previously, I believe in episode 3, I had a major issue with how this Halloween dance suddenly came about without us having been warned in previous episodes. Now, to compare this episode to that, by no means were we warned that this tournament was coming up before this episode. And also by no means were we warned that Daniel was connected to this committee at all. We just found out those things in this particular episode. But as opposed to that completely unheard of, completely unexpected Halloween party, this doesn't seem like posturing. This doesn't seem like just a stage for the story to play out, even though obviously it is. Even though they don't mention that Daniel was part of the committee, it is obvious in hindsight that he would be. And even though we didn't know about such a tournament in previous episodes, Johnny finds out about such a tournament in a very natural way. This is how you do well done world building. We don't necessarily need to know everything that's going on in the world, but the bits we do find out need to make sense in the world that we've built in our head and in the world built by the TV show so far. So bravo, well done. The fourth good of the episode: Robbie's rejection of his friend's plan. Another storyline in this episode is how Robbie's friends within quotation marks, want his help in stealing auto parts from LaRusso Auto. Predictably, after Robbie's little talk with Daniel about the bonsai trees, Robbie refuses, and we get another little payoff scene where he successfully, for the most part, holds his ground against two bigger opponents in some pretty interesting and fun displays of karate. It was predictable as hell, but I'm not complaining. We get to see some sweet karate moves, a lot of avoid and evade, like an airbender, I should say, a reference to Avatar: The Last Airbender, while also realistically showing that had it gone on, Robbie would have been defeated. I must say, Robbie is much more successful in his first venture when compared to, say, Miguel. What I mean is, Miguel, when he tried to stand his ground against his bullies, got his ass beat, whereas Robbie, for the most part, stands his ground and is able to stay on his feet for most of the fight, which is pretty awesome. There could be several reasons for this. The writers could be rushing Robbie's story arc for the sake of time, like I said before. That's realistic. It could also be an implication that Daniel's brand of karate is better than Johnny's brand, or that Daniel is a better master than Johnny. I doubt that was the intention, though. Maybe it's just because Robbie is Johnny's kid. Karate and talent is in his blood. Either way, I'm not calling it a negative because this whole episode just feels like a collection of great character moments. So those are the 4 good scenes that I thought I should talk about. Let me add some more context and texture, like I said I would earlier. All these 4 scenes that I talked about, the 4 scenes that I talked about are Robbie's training regimen, Miguel's date with Samantha, Johnny's confrontation with the tournament committee meeting, and Robbie's rejection of the friends plan, the within quotation marks friends plan. All these four good parts feel like they mesh together to make one cohesive whole. There's an obvious and great parallel between the positive effect that Daniel has on Robbie, sensei to student, and a similar effect that Miguel has on Johnny, student to sensei. Daniel's unwitting advice helps Robbie realize that he wants to fly straight for now, and maybe learn some more about this karate and peace and balance and all that. While Miguel helps Johnny be more than just a blunt instrument, and admit to the committee and to himself that Cobra Kai is helping him as much as it is helping the students. There's no wasted scene or filler in this episode, and consequently, there's nothing bad about this episode that I particularly noticed. It gave us a lot to chew on in a fun 29-minute package without feeling the need to waste our time. So all in all, this is, I won't say it's my favorite episode. I do tend to let things kind of stew inside me and let some ideas grow about before I actually decide what I like and what I don't. So I don't know whether this is my favorite episode, but this is the most balanced and competent episode so far, I would say. Because there's no unnecessary conflict and no unnecessary comedy and no unnecessary scenes here. So that's something good. Okay, speaking of episode length, like I said in the beginning of the episode, some shows just feel the need to draw out each episode to an hour mark, which just makes me think like, come on man, get to it. Netflix's Daredevil, for example, reached that point in some of its episodes in season 1 and a lot of its episodes in season 2. Now don't get me wrong, Netflix Daredevil was awesome. Charlie Cox is an amazing Daredevil. But some episodes just seem to go on and on. If you are constantly checking how many minutes you have left until the episode is finished, you're doing it wrong. On the opposite end, to take an example of a show that I think is doing it quite well, is Mandalorian Season 1. Now, Mandalorian is a Star Wars show. It has an incredible blend between an old Western and space fantasy, which Star Wars essentially is. And each episode just ended when it needed to, which is why some episodes are about 30 minutes or less, and some are close to 50 minutes or even an hour. That's how they did it, and that's how I believe you should do it. Now, I understand that Mandalorian being a Star Wars property, they do have the power to do it and still maintain a loyal viewership. And I understand the fact that most viewers want more meat in their TV series, regardless of its quality. So I get that conflict. I get that network requirement where maybe the network is asking the show creators to consistently have 1 hour episodes, so they have to bloat it out. But all in all, I think it's a negative thing. Okay, so like I said previously, nothing bad. If I had to really nitpick, the one bad of this episode is Daniel's absolute refusal to see eye to eye with Johnny. I don't consider it a bad because that is within character. It's not something that is out of character for Daniel. It has been established already that Daniel is completely unreasonable when it comes to anything Cobra Kai. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, we'll talk about some important parts that I didn't quite mention. Not a trace of the funny, unfunny duo in the office, so that's an A+ for me. The episode was very genuine. Obviously, it's leading towards a pre-specified conclusion, but as I said previously, it does not feel like filler. I feel like we're actually getting some interesting character building. The take a hit part with Aisha is pretty funny. It's not supposed to be. It's again, I keep using this word, but it's Johnny brand of humor, but it is incredibly hilarious. The hug at the end. We see at the end of the episode that Johnny succeeds in what he wants and Miguel in what he wants, and they have a very genuine feel-good hug at the end. And thank God, again, it's not marred by unnecessary conflict. I thought that Daniel was gonna walk in, or someone's gonna walk in, or they're gonna feel awkward, or maybe Johnny's gonna lay this speech down about how a master and a student should maintain this balance, but no. Thank you for allowing them that moment. They have this really good father-son relationship going on, and I really like it. Another important thing, Hawk's awesome tattoo. Hawk is definitely going overboard with Johnny's advice in the previous episode, but man, he is looking like an 80s stereotype through and through, and I gotta say, I love it. And finally, important thing. Kreese is dead? Okay, Is Johnny lying about that? So to have a bit of a spoiler, in some of the advertising material I've seen on Netflix, Chris is obviously a person who is there, and I've seen advertising images basically showing Chris as a character. So how come Chris is dead? So I don't know how it's going to go. I'm now intrigued about how, is it a mental thing? I'm not sure. I'm looking forward to how that'll be played out. Well, that's all we have about Cobra Kai for this episode. Now, before I'm done with the episode, I'll talk a little bit about some of the other shows I've been watching as well. I have watched and finished The Haunting of Bly Manor. The Haunting of Bly Manor came on to Netflix last Friday. That was the 9th of October, and I managed to watch the entire 9-episode series over 2 days, and it is incredible. So given enough time, once I'm done with Cobra Kai, I might actually come back to it and I might talk about it as well, because it's something that really interested me, and I do recommend that you watch it as well. But if you are doubtful or if you're not familiar with Bly Manor, please do stick around, because I have some warning words about Bly Manor in my planned podcast, but you might have to stay a couple of weeks until that comes out as well. Other than that, Mandalorian season 2, I believe, is coming out at the end of October. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I was very invested in season 1, and I'm looking forward to the more of the same, or maybe something different in season 2. So there's that. Other than that, I've also been recommended the Netflix show Dark, which is a German show that has been dubbed in English. I'm not sure how invested I'll be in it. It is apparently a very complex and very dark series, so I might really get into it. So we'll see. The only problem here is that with shows that are not as casual as Cobra Kai, it would take me more time to really think about it and really understand it and really work out some ideas. Whereas Cobra Kai is just, it is cheesy fun, and it's very easy to get into and watch. So there you have it. Thank you for joining me again for the episode 7 All Valley discussion and review in the Wacko Prophet podcast. One more thing, as I mentioned in previous episodes, everything I talk about here is entirely my opinion. So if you do think that I'm being a bit too narrow on certain subjects, or if you think that you have an opinion that I might be interested in, or a conflicting opinion even, please feel free to get in touch with me through any of my social media. I have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you can reach me through any of those social media platforms and tell me what you think. You can also leave me a review, because this podcast is up on all major podcasting platforms, and I also upload a version of it on YouTube. And I have a YouTube channel as well, The Wacko Prophet. I'll leave links to that video. It's not a video, but it's an audio version on YouTube. I'll leave a link to that as well if you rather leave feedback as a YouTube comment. So that's all we have. Here in Sri Lanka, the coronavirus, just like the rest of the world, is still very much in play. Now, I am by all means an introvert, so I don't mind staying indoors at all. I realize I'm sounding more and more like a broken record, but I hope you and your family stay safe and take the necessary precautions to ensure that everyone else is safe as well. We can only get through this together without being together, 6 feet apart. Okay. Thank you then. Thank you once again. This has been the Wacko Prophet podcast. My name is Imran, and you have yourself a great day.